Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of The Main Cut. I am your co-host Jade and also the founder of Main Hookup, and I'm here today with our head of education and community Katanda, who's also our co-host. And I also am going to apologize in advance. There's some celebration happening near where I'm recording today, and so if you hear fireworks, I am so sorry, but I just can't stop that from happening today. But we're going to talk about hair grief. So something that I think it's something that more and more people are talking about now, but kind of the process of loss and change, especially when it comes to your hair, and it's unexpected change, right? So there are things that happen where you're like, okay, you're getting older, and so the texture of your hair naturally changes a little bit. But we're talking, you've had some kind of setback, whether it be heat damage, somebody's like chemically treated your hair without your permission, there's been breakage, you've had stress which has led to hair loss or premature hair loss. So the kind of emotional impact of these major hair setbacks and what that grieving process looks like and different ways of managing and coping with that. But before we get into it, I mean, Katanda, as our resident hairstylist, I'm sure you've seen this happen a lot with different people that you've worked with. So, how have you seen that kind of grief play out when somebody's gone through a major setback like that with their hair?
I've seen this happen directly and very indirectly, as you're stating, with people I've worked with, but also in situations where I was working in a testing center and the people would speak of it. Also, online, of course. A lot of people, once they get to the point of being able to actually talk about what they experienced, they go on and they share. I've been scrolling and have scrolled upon, several conversations like this, but it's everywhere. So that lets us know that it does happen and it's not as uncommon as we would think it should be.
No, definitely. It's not uncommon, but I think there's a lot of reasons that this can happen, right? And I think there's that contrast between what the state of your hair now and the state that it used to be in. And it's almost like losing, for some people, it's like losing a part of themselves in some ways because they're so used to looking at themselves and seeing themselves in a certain way. And I haven't had that experience, so I don't actually know what that feels like. The only time I've ever really cut my hair was a choice when I cut my hair really, really short years ago. So I made the decision to do that. And I was happy with the outcome because I actually just wanted to see what I looked like with short hair. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like I went through a traumatic experience where somebody had damaged my hair and I had no choice but to cut it. That's very different when it feels, I think a lot of it is also feeling like the choice has been taken away from you.
Mhm.
You didn't choose to change your hair, you were forced to because of certain circumstances and things that have happened.
Mhm.
And I also think it's worse when other people are involved. It's very different if you get sick or you have to take medication, or you go through stress and then you experience forms of hair loss and hair and like excess hair shedding
Mhm.
because that's your body going through something. That's very different to, oh, I've been to see a hairstylist and I now have like excess heat damage, or
Mhm.
they have like chemically straightened my hair without my permission and now I have to start my natural hair journey all over again. So again, so sorry for the fireworks, people. But I think where some of this grief of that loss comes from is that the choice was taken away from them because somebody else was involved, and that person has contributed to the hair being changed or their hair changing in a way that they didn't expect and they didn't ask for.
I guess speaking from the point of view where you've gone to a hairstylist and you're expecting like a certain end result style, you have high expectations, typically happens when we're going from our natural texture, so curly to straight. And during the process, something goes awry. So I think we may have covered this in another of the other podcasts, or the educational pieces. However, sometimes going to certain types of salons where you go in, you tell them you want to get your hair blown out and styled, and you get to the shampoo bowl, or even sometimes in the chair, they will mention, but typically at the shampoo bowl, they're like, oh, you need a deep conditioner. And they normally, follow up with your hair's dry or your hair's this or that. And you may agree to it because deep conditioner, who really wants to refuse a deep conditioner? Because we all can use one. Um, Depending on the type of deep conditioner, we know that you can never have too much conditioning or too much moisture. Typically, when we speak of deep conditioner, we're speaking more moisture based than versus protein or anything else. So, like, oh, yeah, of course, deep conditioner. I do one every time I shampoo my hair at home. So, you agree to it, not really knowing that their deep conditioner has a surprise in it for you. And I just feel like that is one of the more common things that happens to your surprise. Uh, of course, the other one is there you go and you get the silk press and they use too much heat or they don't use the proper heat protectant, or your hair, maybe they are a stylist that likes to apply a bunch of oils or grease to your hair and then they're hitting it with the flat iron. And that's another way this can occur, which again, it usually comes as a surprise because in either case, you don't really know this has happened until you go back to shampoo your hair again. So at this particular point, you may or may not be at the salon. If you're at home and you go to shampoo your hair and you're like, oh my gosh, my curls are not bouncing back, then you sort of feel like it's, there's a problem. However, you may attribute that issue to you not properly shampooing your hair, or maybe I should shampoo it again, or maybe I didn't get it wet enough before I applied the shampoo. So now, my hair is not really wet, it's a little damp, and curls aren't reverting. Where in actuality, your curls aren't going to revert because you experience heat damage. Um, there's another case, however, it's not really, it's more of the point of view where you go in and you've been talked into getting a keratin treatment or getting some type of treatment. They're a lot of times no longer calling it keratin treatment. Um, they're calling it, oh, I have this amazing treatment. It's going to smooth your hair. It has, the formula is full of amino acids and this and that. And you not knowing those amino acids are not like straight up amino acids. Like the amino acids, within the amino acids, there are like chemicals like formaldehyde or like, other things that these sorts of treatments include or
Mm.
are infused with. And you, as the client, you don't really know that. So now you're being talked into a treatment that is going to smooth your hair. When we hear smooth, we're like, oh, yeah, smooth. I'm going to be able to keep my silk press for 7 weeks because my hair is so smooth. Or, oh, my curls are a
Mm.
little bit frizzy. I don't really like the frizz, and my curls weren't as frizzy, or if they were a little bit,
Mm.
more relaxed or looser or elongated, then I would love my curls more. And so this is what this stylist is selling you on, all of these things, and you agree to it. And now you don't understand that in actuality, you really ultimately have gotten a chemical straightener that is activated by heat. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. But if you're not fully understanding when they explain this to you, if you don't know all the questions to ask, or
Yeah.
I mean, the main thing is you trust your stylist, especially if this is someone that you're going to multiple times or this is your long term stylist, you're going to trust your stylist. However, and I'll say this, in all full transparency, is us as stylists. This might come across as bad thing, but us as stylists, we pretty much can persuade you into doing what we recommend. That's
Yeah.
part of our jobs. So you would, the way that I use that to my client's advantage is I'm advising you and I'm able to influence you or persuade you into doing what's great to keep your hair healthy
Yeah.
and thriving. But it
Yeah.
also works the other way. Like I can
100%.
persuade you into doing something that's really not going to keep your hair healthy, but it's going to maybe make my job easier, or maybe
Yeah.
it's a new technique that I learned and I want to try it out on all these people. And so I can easily persuade you on that too. So the persuasion is not always in a good
Yeah.
way with some stylists. Or, if you haven't communicated like thoroughly, I guess I will say, with your stylist, then your stylist could not be on the same page. And that happens
Yeah.
a lot because clients and customers speak a different language than us. So that's why I always bring myself down to my clients or customers, communication style or
Mm.
to their knowledge, and try to understand exactly what they're saying, especially when it comes to chemical services, or especially when it comes to like a big change in hair. Okay, so what I'm hearing is
Yeah.
you want your hair an ash blonde, where actuality their ash blonde could very well be a golden blonde because we don't really know the terms. So, or you
Yeah.
could say you want golden blonde and really you want ash blonde, and now we have a golden blonde, and you're like, this is not what I want. And
Yeah.
so that's why I ask a million questions. I advise my clients, to bring in visuals and pictures and examples. And Jade knows this. I'm sure if you guys watch this all the time, you all know this. I could talk to y'all or anyone all day about hair. So if I have a client, I'm doing a consultation. The consultation is supposed to be complimentary, 15 to 20 minutes. Sometimes I'm talking to them for an hour because I want to fully understand myself. Because at this point is where you get all of the understanding, and you know, as the stylists are able to assess, and you're able to ask the proper questions to your clients, because sometimes your client doesn't know, or you guys don't know how to actually relay the information. So I say all that to say sometimes it's done because of poor communication, or not,
Mm.
full, thorough communication. Or sometimes it's done, I don't want to say this, but
Sometimes it's
sometimes
laziness.
a sort of laziness to it, or a manipulation part of it. Like there's a lot of reasons why this could happen.
Yeah.
Because that situation where you walk in the salon and you say, "Hey, I want to get my hair blown out," and I won't particularly call out the name of salons. Maybe you guys can refer back to the other podcast and hear about that. But that's done deliberately, and I think it's a manipulation tactic, because you're telling me I need
Mm.
a deep conditioner, and you know good and well you put relaxer or texturizer, whatever y'all want to call it, in the
Mm.
deep conditioner bucket. But you're telling me it's a deep conditioner when in actuality it's a chemical straightener. So
Yeah.
that's the
No, I mean,
manipulation part.
that's an outright, for when that happens, that's an outright lie. Like you said, somebody's chosen to do that to a client and say, I want to make my job easier. It's easier if your hair is straight. And again, they've taken that decision away from them. I actually just remember there was only one instance where my hair was actually heat damaged, but that was a lack. I think that was actually a lack of information that was shared. So at the time, I had a little bit of my hair out because I had like a weave in, and then I was kind of trying to keep that part of my hair straight so that it was similar to the texture of the weave. What I didn't realize is almost like when you're cooking, if you keep putting oil and creams in something and then you keep straightening it, you're literally cooking your hair. So
Right.
I hadn't thought of it like that, and I wasn't told that at the time. So then when I came back and I was like, this one little tiny section, luckily it was a small section, it wasn't a massive part of my hair. I was like, this little section isn't like reverting back to what it was at the ends, because again, like it was okay at the top and it was like maybe an inch or two at the end that wouldn't revert back. So I had heat damage there. But luckily, it wasn't so massive and it wasn't so disruptive that I was like, oh, okay, I have to start everything all over again. It was like, okay, this is a little patch of my hair. I'll trim off the edges bit by bit as my hair grows back. So, and that it was frustrating, but it wasn't like debilitating. It wasn't something that I had to really grieve over. It was just more inconvenient. Whereas there are people who are going through this where it's like they have, like you said, because of somebody else's hands, have lost or had to restart their journey, which is really devastating, especially when they've had their natural hair for so long and they've put all that time and energy and effort. And again, it's a bit of it's associated with their identity. Some people choose to always have their hair natural and never really chemically straighten their hair because that's like it's a lifestyle choice. They prefer their natural hair to have it chemically straightened, and for them, it's like all of that work that might have been 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years plus of work to look after their hair has been undone by somebody else's hands, and that's something to grieve over. It's like you grieve over the trust that's broken between that relationship, but then you also grieve over the fact that you've put all of that time and effort into getting your hair to that place and you're having to start over again. But I think equally, there's also the stress that causes hair loss. There's also health conditions and then having to take certain medications. And that's also has that impact where it's like, oh, I'm grieving this loss, but I'm also going through something else at the same time. And then if you spend I say too much time, but if there's a lot of focus on the loss, how are you meant to like physically help your body recover from the other things that it's going through? It can almost become a bit of a vicious cycle. Whereas if you have chronic stress and that chronic stress has led to hair loss, and then you're stressed about the hair loss, you're kind of just feeding back into that cycle that you're already in, which inevitably is going to lead to more hair loss.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how do you, when you're in situations like that, how do you what's the word? How do you reframe? How do you reframe so that you can start that journey again after you've been through the grieving process? Because a lot of people will go through that as that grief of, oh, I have to start again, or this isn't who I am. What I look like, I think that's actually the biggest thing. What I look like is now no longer a reflection of the person that I believe that I am. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of our hair that, like I said earlier, reflects our identity. It is a choice to have your hair natural. It's a choice to chemically straighten your hair. It's a choice to wear braids. It's a choice to wear wigs and weaves. And when you are now in a position where what you have is no longer a reflection of the person that you believe yourself to be, that's also a grief. And that's like a grievance. That's a process that people have to go through to come to terms with the fact that I'm still the same person that I was. I'm just now having to start this part of my personal journey over again.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is definitely a grieving process. I won't even probably say process because I feel like once that happens, pretty much like a lot of reasons for grief, it's continual because you might be okay for a moment and then something triggers it or something
Mm,
reminds you of it, and then maybe you see a picture of yourself and so it restarts the grieving all over again. um it is very, especially if a person, I think you spoke to this a little bit, we have different types of people here. People that
mm,
have been natural all their lives, people that have been relaxing their hair and finally they get to the point where they are comfortable with
mm,
their natural texture as it grows from the scalp, and they're now embracing
mm,
their natural texture. Then you have those that flip flop between the two. You might have someone that's had three big chops and they go back and forth between relaxer and they're just okay with it. They're just kind of like riding the wave and boat. Um, so it depends on where you are in this journey
Mm.
which actually has a lot to do with either are you going to grieve about it or not. Because if you're someone that's
Mm.
riding the wave and, oh, really, I wasn't ready to relax my hair or wasn't ready to go straight with my hair right now, but whatever, it's no big
Mm.
deal. I'm just going to chop it off in a pixie and I'll start all over. And it really doesn't phase them. Or you
Mm.
have those that are natural all their lives and they're totally devastated. It's like the end of the world type situation because,
Mm.
oh my God, I didn't ask for this, especially if it didn't happen by heat. It happened by one of those situations where someone put something, the chemical straightener into the whatever, and
Yeah.
now the hair is straight. That, I think, in a lot of ways, it causes the most initial shock reaction and devastation that I've seen, either in my chair
Mm.
or just people that I've coached along the way or spoken to. Um, because you never in a million years wanted to like have your hair permanently straight, like
Yeah.
ever. Maybe temporarily with a flat iron or the silk
Yeah.
press, but never permanently straight.
Mm.
So that's a different sort of thing there, and I've seen where people just can't fathom, just can't get
Mm.
past it, and it's like a huge devastation. Where me, on the other hand, it is a huge devastation, and it's totally not fair, and it's a huge violation. You're
Mm.
actually violated on the stylist's behalf because you're supposed to be the professional, and
Yeah.
we know we do not do those. Where's your work ethic? Like,
Mm.
I don't think you have one at this point. Um, but then you also have the person that had always relaxed her, worn her hair straight, and you finally got to the point where you want to be able to wear your natural curls and embrace them, and you're feeling okay about it, but you still might be a little bit on the fence. This is
Yeah.
why you're teetering sometimes. Okay, I just got to go get my fix with my silk press. I've seen where that has been like even more so devastating because you're like, okay, I finally get to a point in my life or in this season or whatever it is in my confidence, self esteem levels where I am okay with my hair. And now it's seemingly so that this person wasn't okay with it, which is why they chose to do what they did, or which is why, maybe they were okay with it, but their skill set wasn't to the level of what I needed it to be, their experience level, because now they only hit it with the flat iron and the first time I have heat damage. So there's a lot of scenarios. I don't think any story is ever the same. Um, I just feel from a hairstylist point of view, to a certain extent, I used to say this very loosely until I got to the point where I've been a person, I never had hair issues. I had way too much hair from childhood. My mom used to thin my hair out, and it was like, ooh, this is too much hair. We got to get rid of some of this hair. So she used to thin it out. I've always had a ton of hair. However, I am in perimenopause and I am losing my hair, like a lot of my hair. And people still look at me like, oh my gosh, you have a ton of hair. No, I don't. I don't even have, I wouldn't even say a quarter of the hair that I used to have at this point. So I used to say it loosely because I would be like, it's just hair, it grows back. Sometimes you get to the point, whether if it's like a life cycle change, which is what I'm facing, or you're in a situation where you have a health issue that arises and it changes. There are certain instances where it don't always grow back. So I'm watching what I say when it comes to that. I used to say that a lot of
Yeah.
times. Haircut. Oh, just get the haircut. It's just hair. It always grows back.
Yeah.
That's not 100% true from where I am now in life.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's also a good thing to note, right? Because it's a very easy thing to say, especially when people are going through that process of, like you said, grieving for any reason. And there's like, I feel that this happens slightly less now compared to how much it used to happen, let's say 10, 15 years ago, but there is still a lot of psychological attachment to length. So when people lose length, I think that is also what people find devastating. It's not just, oh, hair loss or hair texture change. There's like a lot around, there's still this kind of emphasis on things like hair growth oils or hair growth serums. Or what's that other one? What's that one that is going around now? Botana oil. It's like there's always this magical hair growth thing that people are focusing on because there's this emphasis on length. It's kind of like, you know, in the startup world where it's like growth at all costs in terms of like growing a business. When it's your hair, it's like length at all costs. So it's like people wanting their hair to be as long as possible. And then when again they go through these processes, they're kind of grieving the change, but then they're just like, oh my gosh, I've lost this length as well. And that's a huge barrier, like a mental and emotional barrier to overcome too. And I mean, as a hairstylist, I think this is really important for the other stylists that are listening to the podcast. From your experience, Katanda, how can you, as a stylist, emotionally support clients that are going through this kind of hair trauma? Because they might have come to you after somebody else did the damage, or they've come to you after, like you said, they've started going through perimenopause or menopause. They've started going through like a stressful period in their life and they're experiencing excess shedding or the beginnings of hair loss. So, how have you supported clients that have been through that in the past, and what advice do you have for any hairstylists that are experiencing this with some of their clients right now?
So I think I have several answers to that depending on the situation. However, in the sense where we're speaking at someone um, getting or becoming a victim of heat damage, um, or a victim of someone unknowingly, well, to
Chemically straightening the hair.
straightening their hair, there is really, I listen more than I speak in those situations because
Mm,
there's nothing that I can say to change it. This is what happened. This is what it is. This is how I feel. I'm not gonna try to make you feel better about it because there's no way that I can. Um, it is one of those things where there are actually a bunch of there's a thing going on right now where they are teaching hairstylists how to recognize domestic violence in the chair, which I think is
mm,
absolutely incredible. Because, well, that's a whole other conversation. But I'm saying that to say, us as hairstylists, we hear so much from our clients about their lives, their deepest, darkest secrets, their trauma stories, their situations with their spouse when he cheated on them, or like there's a lot that we hear, and we're hairstylists, so we're not like trained, we're not licensed to give therapy advice type advice. We can give personal opinion. We can give, what I would do in a situation. However, the majority of us are not licensed to give that level of advice. Where there's also another course that's called psychotherapy, where it's another one of those like courses that actually help you to, you know, sort of seemingly become the therapist in behind the chair. However, I will hold your hand. If you catch me on the right day with this perimenopause, I will cry with you. I will, walk you through and support you
mm,
because I'm not in that situation. So I
mm,
can't tell you how to feel. Now, when you're in a situation where you're like, I'm in this is a life cycle that it can't be avoided.
mm,
Like, no one did anything to me or my hair. This is just the cycle of life. And
Mm,
so in that sense, I then step up to the plate and I do give my, certified hair loss practitioner advice and my 30 plus years of advice as a hairstylist. This is where I do
mm,
more talking rather than listening because now I can educate you. I can educate you on things that I've been experiencing that actually have helped me or
mm,
information that I've gathered from my GYN that she's advised me to do and share that information, or I share my knowledge as a hair loss practitioner and hairstylist. Okay, this is what you can do. This is what you should not do. This
mm,
is how you should analyze your hair and how much loss it is. This is what it should look like normally, like 50 to 100 hairs. This is what that looks like. This is what excessive hair loss looks like. That's what I
mm,
do more of my consultative work, and just my expertise is actually spilled out there, rather than listening more. I feel
yeah.
like that is more of a teaching moment rather than a more of a empathetic, sort of sympathetic moment. Because again, we're all, if you're a woman, we're all going to reach that point. If you don't, that means sad for you because you passed on before you got to this point. The other thing is having the heat protection. That is something that I teach my clients, whether if they're
Mm,
doing their silk press or they're going to someone, like when I'm doing my virtual calls and they're going to their stylist.
mm,
You want to have the proper protection on your hair prior to getting the service. I am going to teach you how to prep your hair
yeah.
prior to the silk press service to sort of like eliminate these things, because I should be able to give you 100 silk presses and you not receive heat damage, like maybe at the halfway point, because eventually
Mm,
you're constantly pressing your hair and flat ironing and silk pressing your hair time and time and time and time again.
mm,
It's inevitable. The heat is going to break down those bonds. It doesn't matter how strong that heat protectant is. And that's
yeah.
just a fact. However, you should never go for a silk press, blowout, flat iron, whatever you're calling it, on the first time receiving heat protection. That means it's an epic fail. Your person has
Uh,
not protected your hair. They've used something that was frying your hair when the heat hit it. Like,
mm,
I don't understand how people, well, I do understand, but you should not be receiving heat damage to your hair on the first time you're straightening your hair. I don't care if it's been
yeah.
100 years. That is just improper practice. And improper practice, and like you're not using the proper, heat protectant, because every heat
Mm,
protectant is not perfect for every type of client or
yeah.
every hair type or situation.
Yeah.
And then, God forbid, you have the flat iron on hell. You don't have to have the flat iron so high to do a nice, sleek heat. I mean, a nice, sleek silk press. It's just improper practice at that point. So
Mm,
there are things that can be avoided and things that you unfortunately can't avoid, and that's the
mm,
difference. And that is sort of like how I decide to handle the situation or to communicate with the client.
mm,
For the purpose of this podcast, I do more listening than talking because I don't, I've never gone, well, I can say that I did that test at that salon, those one of those type salons, to see,
mm.
because this was years ago. This was like very early 2000s. And I
Okay.
didn't tell them I was a hairstylist. I had never been there. This is a place that my friend had been going to.
Right.
And I went in to do the test because I was like, oh, people, I know you guys are kidding me. No one is actually doing this. And they're like, yes, it's actually happening. And I went in and she did. She pulled that on me. She was like, your hair is very dry and you need a deep conditioner. And I was like, ma'am, my hair is
Uh,
not very dry. I am a whole hairstylist.
oh, you're
And
talking
I
to the
want
wrong
to wear
person.
my hair sleek, bouncy and flowy. Like, you are not gonna pull that one on me. So no, I don't want your deep conditioner. And so when I left, I was like, you are absolutely right. She asked me to get the deep conditioner. So I know it happens. I've witnessed it with my own eyes. But you have to you just have to be aware, be vigilant, especially if you're a person that is really protective over your length and you're all about length retention. You don't even like to get your hair trimmed. Just be careful when you're out here getting your silk presses and who you're going to, who you're letting, as my grandmother would say, who you're letting play in your hair. You gotta be careful.
Mm. No, it's true though. It's true, and I mean, I think everything that you've said is really helpful for all the hairstylists. That there will be people who've already come across this, and there'll be people who are going through it right now, and they don't know what to do to help. And I think all of those things are really helpful for like equipping hairstylists to be able to manage those situations and support their clients in the way that they need to be supported, right? And we will, for anybody that heard the names of the courses that Katanda mentioned earlier, we'll link them in our newsletter version so that you guys can take a look at those different courses. The psychotherapy that you mentioned, Katanda, and there was another one as well. I can't remember. There was
Psychotherapy. Actually, I want to actually take this course, but then there is I don't know the name of it. Actually, I'm gonna look
there's
this up.
another one that I think is Care Behind the Chair, and they
That's
this is to do with like
domestic
spotting
violence.
signs of violence and things like
Yeah,
that. Like there
that's the one.
there are yeah, there are a couple of them. So again, we'll add the links to them so that anybody that's interested in taking those courses and you have the resources to go off and look them up and potentially book the courses in yourself. But I mean, a question to kind of like begin to bring this to a close in, I think, again, a really helpful way is how do people start to move away from the grief to the acceptance and then rebuilding their confidence? Because again, people can go through all of these things. Like I say, it could either be health related, life stage related, somebody who has taken advantage of them, who is a stylist. It could be any of those things. But all of those people will go through a similar process, which is grief of what has happened to their hair when it's not their doing, the acceptance that it's happened, and then that stage of moving on and saying, okay, it's done now. I can't undo it, but I'm going to go out of my way to start rebuilding myself and my hair as it was before. So, in terms of like trying to move from through each of those stages, it's like, how do people go through that? I think grief kind of just lasts almost as long as it lasts, right? And you can actually, I feel like you can get to the stage of acceptance and still be grieving.
Yeah, and like I
you know
said earlier, you can think you're past the grief, and then it comes back based on triggers or whatever causes it to resurface.
mm,
Um, and yes, okay, so it's called chair care in the chair is where
Care and
they're
care.
helping you identify domestic violence and or trafficking, but also getting to the point where you are accepting what has happened and getting to a place where you can now let go and move forward.
mm,
It doesn't, it looks differently for everyone. I think the thing is give yourself time, because it's not only, we have to always think about the trauma that's generational for us, or the trauma that stems from 400 something years ago. Like,
mm,
we still carry that, even though we weren't alive and we didn't personally experience that, but we experience it every day in society. We've experienced growing up, we've experienced our parents talking about it, our grandparents, our great grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. We experience it when we're fighting for the Crown Act and just being accepted for our hair
mm,
as it is. And it's just a lot of that comes into, shows up more prevalently in situations like this, because that can be a
mm.
trigger. Okay, I had this situation happen to me, and oh my God, I remember when I went to work and that person told me my hair didn't look as good as textured, and my natural texture as it did straight. So
Yeah.
it's, you know, things like that happen where we're constantly reminding. So
Mm,
I just advise everyone, whether if you have or even have not experienced this firsthand, maybe you know someone that has, just give yourself grace. Give yourself
mm,
grace. Hold on to it as long as you feel like you need to. I know in certain instances, people are like, I'm not ready to let it go. I know the ends are stringy. I know the ends are
mm,
straight, scraggly, whatever, but I'm not ready to let it go right now. You
mm,
have to get to a place where you are, because then other things come into play. Like you're going to
mm,
start seeing more breakage, and you're going to start seeing, if it's not hair loss, you're going to start seeing where your hair doesn't look as good as it looked before, because now you have these two textures fighting against each other, and you can't really
mm,
style it because one texture requires a certain level or technique of styling where the other one does not. So there's a lot. When you're experiencing hair loss for whatever reason, that's just something that we have to get, you know, we have to manage within ourselves,
mm.
because it never feels good to lose your hair unwillingly. Like,
Mm.
yeah, you may have gotten the heat damage, but your hair didn't fall out.
Yeah, yeah,
When your
yeah.
hair is coming out, that's a
Mm,
whole level of like grief there. And I'm saying that for myself. Like when it first started happening, I was like, oh, it's just a little hair. And
mm,
now after it happening so consistently and me trying to fix it with all the things that I know how to do,
mm.
and it's still happening, like I had to come to grips with, well, I like wigs too. So and this will give me the opportunity to become the copper ginger that I wanted to get, because I wasn't going to be able to do it with my natural hair. I'm going to go and get that wig. Like, you have to finally get to the point where you say, and I reset it, I am not
Mm,
my hair.
mm,
I am not my hair, which is hard for us. It's particularly hard. It's hard for women in general, but particularly hard for Black women,
mm.
because we are our hair. Our hair is super amazing. That's like, I would say, and not just because I'm a hairstylist, that's where 75% of the Black girl magic comes from, is our hair. Our hair is magical. Like, it can look like 2 inches, and then I come and show up and now I have 7 inches because of the magic in my hair. So that's part of who we are. And it's just, something it's just so hard with hair, which is why I just give grace to people that are in these types of situations.
Mm,
People, I give grace to other hairstylists that may not know, they may not be as well rounded, and they may not
mm,
be the best in styling and taking care of and caring for people's natural hair as it's in their natural texture.
mm,
We have some stylists that only style wigs. They could care less of what your hair looks like underneath. I give grace to
mm,
them because for whatever reason they never thought it was important to
mm,
care for people's natural hair. However, that's near and dear to my heart. Like, I care about what
mm.
your hair looks like under all of that before I care about what it looks like styling. I had a really bad experience styling this celebrity one time.
Oh
I ain't
no.
gonna say the name because I literally thought my career was over.
No.
It was bad. Oh my gosh. She had a sew-in in,
Uh,
and this was for some fabulous red carpet event type situation.
right.
And she requested this style, and I was like, I don't think, maybe we should. I didn't say I don't think. I was like, I think maybe we should try this because of, this is better for your hair, or
Mm,
however I explained it. I tried to talk her out of that direction, but she
mm.
was dead set on, no, this is the style and this is how I want it. It was
Oh,
like
man.
some type swoop situation where she didn't
Oh,
have any edges. I'm like, you,
oh,
there's
oh
no way.
no.
Like, I am a
Oh.
hairstylist, but I'm not a magician. And You have this sew-in that's starting like 3 inches back, ma'am. This is not gonna work
Oh,
for you. But she was so adamant about it, and I could not change her mind.
oh
Now,
no.
this was many, many, many years ago. I would say then I was still a very seasoned stylist. However, I was a younger stylist.
Mm.
Now, if the same situation happens, I would be like, girl, nah, I ain't doing that. And I'm about to start packing up my stuff and I'm leaving. However, I proceeded
Oh,
to try to give her what she wanted.
and it didn't
It
work.
was an absolute nightmare. And I was there with the makeup artist, and we just kept looking at each other. And now, mind you, her skin was flawless, beautiful.
Oh,
Like, not a blemish, not a pimple, not a
oh,
nothing. The makeup artist job was easy. Mine,
mm,
and I did the style. Well, I attempted to do the style, and still to this day, I will see pictures. They will resurface. I sent it to my friend maybe 6 months ago because I had resurfaced. I was like, "Oh my god, this is the day that I thought I was gonna have to go and probably become, I don't know, a car mechanic or something." I'm never
ah,
gonna be able to work in this business again. And so we cracked up about it. But really, that's like, there's just some things that we have to, as stylists, like, it's not possible.
mm,
So if you're coming to me and your hair is like coming out in handfuls and you still want to go and get that hair color, I'm gonna be like, ma'am, no, that's not a good
we're not
idea for
doing
you.
that today. We're
Like,
not
it
doing
may
that.
not, the hair color probably is not going to add to it, but it's not good for your strands either. Like, it's
Mm,
not good for what's happening in your, like, under your follicle, in your scalp, like all that.
mm,
So it's a hard thing, and I take it case by case. Um, and I manage case by case. And again, some people have tough skin, so I'll be able to say something in a way that, I
yeah,
wouldn't
they'll be
say
able to
to
take
the
it.
next person,
Yeah.
because she might break down and just fall out the chair and cry. So you just
Mm,
have to be very, very careful. That's what I'll say. But ultimately, us as women, we have to, I mean, we cherish our hair so much. Um, but we have to let it go. When it's time to let it go, it's time to let it go. Whether if that's scraggly ends from a heat protection, and whether if that's 7 inches of hair where you thought you were getting deep conditioner and they actually relax your hair, whether it's like,
mm,
you're in perimenopause and you're experiencing excessive hair loss, whatever the case is, we have to get to our point within to let it go and move
mm,
forward, because otherwise we're going to stay broken. Because I mean, how we feel amazing when our hair looks amazing.
mm.
When our hair looks like trash, we sort of feel like trash. So
Yeah.
the more you hold on to the trashy look, the more you're gonna feel like trash. So you got to let it go
Mm.
and keep it moving. And again, I love a good wig. I love a good. We love braids. We love protective styles. Sometimes you have
Mm.
to add a little bit, accessorize the hair that's coming from your scalp. So.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also a lot to be said around not just like letting things go, but also not wrapping our self worth in our hair.
Yes.
Like, I think we have what we have in the black community is that our hair is very meaningful in terms of our identity and in terms of our culture, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. You should not consider like, oh, because my hair has changed, I am no longer the same person I was before. You're the same person, you just look different.
Yeah.
And I think looking different is the main thing because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's worse. It's just different. And I
Different.
think that's what a lot of people aren't able to, that a lot of people struggle with coming to terms with is that just because this is different doesn't mean it's bad. But they
Mm-hmm.
assume that it's bad because it's different to how they usually like the image that they've created of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, the one thing is how do we get to a point where hair is always going to be a really important part of our community. It's always going to be a really huge part of our culture. But how can we get to a point where it isn't so wrapped up in our self worth That
Mm-hmm.
when these things happen for whatever reason, like you said, it could be like stress, it could be menopause, it could be you've got to take some medication because you're unwell.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, when these things happen, that it doesn't like pull the rug from beneath us because we
Mm-hmm.
haven't wrapped up our self worth in the
Yeah.
way that we look at this particular moment in time in our lives. So it's
Yeah.
more so how do we get to a point as a collective, as a people,
Mm-hmm.
where that happens. It's like this life change has happened, but it hasn't made me feel less than, less than a person that I felt 6 weeks ago when everything felt fine.
Yeah.
So I don't think either of us have an answer to that. I think that's like something to leave with the listeners.
Yeah.
So everybody who's listening, maybe that's something that people can comment on. Like we love a good comment. So if you have any comments or any thoughts on anything that we've said today, or any of your own experiences that you want to share, we'd love to hear them in the comments. Katanda and I have shared ours, both what we've experienced and what we have seen, and largely what Katanda has seen.
I'm 1000% transparent. I share way too much.
There are things that there's
I
nothing that's not
think
really
so.
shared. So, I mean, for everybody that's listening, like I said, it'd be great to hear your thoughts in the comments. Katanda, is there anything else that you want to leave our listeners with before we wrap up?
No, I think you did a great job by saying ultimately, like, we, our hair does not determine our self worth. So we have to know that we are who we are, even if we decide to go in the bathroom and buzz cut our hair. We're still going to be the same. Like, we, it's hard to say. I know one, I've actually said that when I was working. Actually, I said that when I was working at L'Oreal because they would always want to throw me into the tests. And I was like, y'all love my hair more than y'all love me because why are you always throwing me into these tests when you know I don't have time? I don't have the, like, and they're like, no, actually, no, we love you, Katana, we love you, but we also love your hair. So that was a moment that I had where I would sometimes feel like they loved my hair more than they loved me. So if
Mm,
I didn't have this hair, would you guys still feel the same about me? Um,
mm,
and I mean, I do believe that they would. However, I just, was relating my hair to the situation and them always wanting to test. So that's the thing. Even as little girls, I think it starts that maybe it's not a solution for adults, but I think it is
mm,
definitely a solution for kids. Teach them
mm,
that at a young age. Teach them to embrace their natural hair that grows from the scalp at a young age. I
mm,
am all for like little cute girly styles and
mm,
like I said, accessorizing your natural hair, but you do not need to do that on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
no.
8, 9, 10 year olds. Because
Mm,
actually, what are you teaching them? You're teaching them, okay, we're going to go and get these extensions because what's coming from your natural scalp, the hair that you have on your head, naturally is not good enough. So,
mm,
in that sense, I think for kids, it becomes more than a protective style because they don't even they have no idea what a protective style is. Like they don't
mm,
understand the importance of it or like the purpose of it. You're actually teaching them it's like affecting their self-esteem because
mm,
little girls, we used to put the towel on our heads and we would swing the towel. We didn't do actual hair. So when
mm,
you have that hair in your head, if you're a little girl that has shorter hair and now you take the braids out or the protective styles out and you can't swing your hair like that, how are you feeling as a little
mm.
girl? I think people need to understand that more. It starts with children. And
Yeah.
I am really big on that. Like, and furthermore, all these toxins in this hair that y'all putting in these kids, it's like
Yeah.
putting a relaxer in the kids' hair. Let's just keep
Mm.
it real. So, unless you're using non-toxic hair, and most people are not. So,
Mm,
I'll cut it there. Maybe that's another conversation we could have. I know we talked about kids and their hair before, but that's a big one for me and near and dear to my heart. Y'all don't need to be putting all of this hair in these little kids' hair.
no.
We don't know how it's
Mm,
affect them in the long run. They might end up with neck problems, back problems, because that hair is
mm.
heavy. Like, this is a little 3-year-old neck. Why does she have all this hair that she has to carry around?
Mm,
Our natural hair is not that heavy.
yeah. And it's also, like you say, it's like when you have those incidents in life where life changes, all of those associations that you've had since you were younger then have a domino effect on how you respond when those things happen in, in real time. So I do think that, like we said, the biggest impact that we have the potential to have is with the younger generation, because we can stop or prevent or reduce the chances of them going through the things that we've gone through. With adults, it's a bit trickier, but we can always be there to support each other in the best way possible. But
Yeah.
I do agree that the best way to make a change in this sense is to think about how we're introducing the idea of hair and what that means to us with kids as they're getting older.
Yeah.
But I mean, this has been an hour has gone by very quickly, as it usually does. But this has been a really good conversation. And like we said before, everybody, if you have any comments, if you have any stories, if you have anything interesting to share, then please mention them in the comments, and we'll get back to you or reply to the podcast through the email, and we'll also get back to you that way. But a huge thank you to Katanda, as usual, for being our co host and sharing all of her amazing knowledge and wisdom. And a huge thank you to everybody who's been listening. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye. Thank you, guys.